Okay, it's been a bit. I've had shit to do. We actually got engaged like a long time ago, but we weren't able to like pick a venue, make the financial commitment, and really start planning for it until relatively recently, like within the past couple of years. In fact, some of the wedding planning went on while I was still in the hospital dealing with all of that shit. A somewhat related note, I actually toured the venue while I was still recovering at home. So I toured the venue with like a feeding tube coming out of my stomach, and I can't remember if I still had the chest box then or not, but wasn't in the best shape, but really wanted to see the place. So the planning for it was actually done like in relatively small part by us. It was actually mostly well, my mother did a lot of the planning. And then her mother also helped out with the planning. If you have never planned for a wedding before, I cannot tell you how much of a pain in the ass it is. Because you're not just picking the venue and the dates. I will say one thing that did help. We wound up booking the wedding at a place which was kind of an all-inclusive thing. When we booked the venue, they also handled like the catering that was done in-house, the wedding cake also done through them, DJ and sound also done through them. Yeah, even with that level of centralization and convenience, still a massive pain in the ass. I can't imagine trying to coordinate all of those things separately. Like leading up to the wedding, like several months out from it, we were still doing things like coordinating with a florist, coordinating on the wedding cake. Oh, I should tell the wedding cake story. For the wedding cake, we have to have a meeting with the person responsible for it. The person who's doing this doesn't have like a big business, it's something that they run out of their home. My wife and I go out to the person's home that's doing the cakes. They ask if we wanted to do something more traditional, or if we wanted to, you know, mix it up a little bit. And when we mixed it up a little bit, I don't know if they expected what we were going to do. Because what we decided was we were going to go for a theme cake instead of like a traditional, usual, what you might expect kind of cake for a wedding. And as it turns out, this person was very much on board with that. Because they had like these like catalogs with pictures of cakes they've done in the past. And like there's a lot of traditional ones in there, but then there's themed ones that they did. The one that immediately stuck out to me when I saw it was they did a wedding cake that was themed around The Nightmare Before Christmas. And a lot of the cake was designed with like that kind of design that's on Jack Skellington's suit. So we decided, you know what? It's our wedding, comrade. So we say, what if we did a Monster Hunter themed cake? Because at this point, we'd already been thinking, like, what kind of themes we might use, what sort of music we might use, and there was definitely going to be something Monster Hunter. So we go to this person and we're like, what if we did a cake themed around this game series we play called Monster Hunter? And they're like, you know what? I was worried that this was going to be like a usual, very plain, kind of boring wedding cake, and I am glad it's not. And as it turned out, like everyone she'd met with that day requested some kind of offshoot theme instead of just a usual style of wedding cake. And she was, I mean, it's harder to do that for her, but she was also very happy about that, because it's generally just more fulfilling to do something like that. We had like some images going into it. We knew that we wanted like a Rathian and a Rathalos at the top of the cake, because those are like the male and the female wyvern. And then we started looking through like loading screens and just thinking about how the game generally works. And that's when I thought, like, how many layers are going to be on this cake? So that's when we went, well, I proposed the idea, I think it was me who proposed the idea, of we go like, since there's 3 layers, we go with the bottom layer is the grasslands that you're walking on through, like, the base level. So that's where your camp would be, where the basic level monsters would be. Second level, you make it kind of a brown stone color to represent, like, going up into the mountains. And then the third layer, you have that be, like, the sky, because that's where, like, the monsters who can fly are going to be. And that's ultimately kind of what we went with. At the top, there was, like, it's a gold leaflet that was used as, like, a quote-unquote nest for the wyverns. And then on the sides of it, we also asked the person making the cake, so there's these little cat things in the game called palicos. Could you put a couple of them on the cake? And she did it. Now, we were worried about, like, this costing a whole lot extra to do, but we were pleasantly surprised that it wasn't that much extra. So we were like, hell yes, we're doing this. And then beyond that, like, going into the tasting of food that was going to be served at the wedding,
What should I do?
she was back there again, and we got a little thing of like flavors that we could have for, like, the cake itself, and then, like, I can't remember if it was the filling or, like, topping or whatever, but in the long run we got basically the two that one of them I preferred and one of them she preferred. So the cake was part dark chocolate, part snickerdoodle. Kind of an odd combination,
Tell me what
but
you need.
it's what we liked. There were meetings with the florist. I wasn't really involved with those. One thing I was involved with was, like, meetings where we would go to the venue and decide what kind of plates are we having? What's the, like, utensils and silverware going to look like? What kind of, like, name cards do we use for the tables? We were starting off with it being relatively basic, although we did decide that, like, tablecloths and such were going to be based on the colors of the wedding, which were gold for her, and for me it was like a hunter green. Almost like that British racing kind of, like, deeper green color. We also discussed, like, what kind of lighting there would be for the venue, for, like, dinner and for dancing. They mentioned, like, all the extra things you could add on. Like, they're talking about, you can have these, like, flashing lights and a smoke machine and for your grand entrance and shit. And I'm thinking, I mean, that would be cool, but it also seemed kind of unnecessary. So we were going into this thinking it would be, like, relatively plain, because those things, when you add them, the cost is usually per person attending the wedding. We were planning for, like, I don't know, close to, like, 80, 90 people there. That's how many people we were going to invite. Obviously, like, some people can't come, but we were still expecting on the higher end number-wise. So we're still going through planning. I'm starting to get in touch with the DJ more, because we have a meeting with him. We're going into this, and he's saying, like, what's your timeline of events? And our answer, of course, is, I don't fucking know. So he makes, like, a rough timeline of events, goes over the things that could happen throughout dinner, the reception, the ceremonies, the dancing, stuff like that. And he mentions a couple of things, like the shoe game, which is where, like, each person has, like, their own shoe and the other person's shoe, and you answer questions about, like, who's more likely to whatever.
When you first met, who made the first move? Oh my! It's a good thing you're looking this way, because she was not looking with loving eyes there.
I remember I initially brought that up to, well, my mother in particular, because she was helping a lot with the planning. And she's like, I don't know about this. It sounds kind of stupid. But then we did it, and it was actually kind of fun. And it also didn't take nearly as long as she expected it would. Here's how much thought we'd put into the music to that point. Almost every part of the form that was asking what song are you going to play here, it just said TBD. To be determined. My wife had some ideas for songs that were getting turned down by, as she phrased it, the old people. I had ideas too that were also getting turned down by the old people. I remember, I was discussing with my mother some of the songs that I was thinking of having for the dance portion in particular. And she's just listening to these and going, "You can't dance to this." And keep in mind, we're suggesting stuff like city pop, which is a genre that you're supposed to dance to. I'm recommending 90s club music, and she's going, "You can't dance to this." I'm recommending songs specifically about dancing with a dance beat, and she's going, "You can't dance to this." Oh yeah, that was another one. She said you couldn't dance to Eurobeat. I will say, the way that the music for the dancing portion was set up was they had it so you had X amount of songs that had to be played, and then you had a general playlist that if the mood's right and they have time, they'll play some of those too. And then there was one more section which was do not play under any circumstance. And there was one song that I knew I did not want to be played, and I said so when we met. The moment he said, "Are there any songs you don't want to be played?" I immediately said, "The Electric Slide." I am done with that. I do not want to hear it anymore, but especially not at my wedding. Oh, and another one that I knew I wanted to play. For the wedding, there's the first dance, there's the mother-groom dance, and there's the father-daughter dance. And I immediately knew, because I had actually discussed this with my mother beforehand, our dance music was going to be Elvis Presley versus Junkie XL, Little Less Conversation. My mother and I, growing up, would watch TV together. It wasn't just one kind of TV or one show. We would watch shit like Seinfeld together. We would also watch things like Millennium and X-Files together. If she could stay awake long enough, we'd sometimes watch Mad TV or Saturday Night Live together. But another show we would watch together was Everybody Loves Raymond. And there's a particular point in that show where Robert's brother gets married, and they have a first dance to that song I just mentioned, and it is the goofiest looking shit. So I immediately said, "Hey Mom, how about this for our first dance?" Or the mother-groom dance, and she was completely on board with it. And I will say that even though she was shooting down some of the songs, I did slip some of them in anyway. But I also let her have a couple of picks song-wise. It was a couple of songs that were by the Beatles or Paul McCartney. And then of course we included songs that our parents chose for their either first dance or whatever was quote-unquote their song. I'll get more into the actual dancing stuff once I start talking about the wedding itself. So rewinding time a bit, we had to meet with the officiant. And the officiant is the guy who
Am I supposed to be doing something?
is basically standing up in the middle of the ceremony and talking a lot and then pronouncing us husband and wife. And we got the same officiant who did my brother's wedding a few years before. We decided to get him because, well, frankly, he was good at it. He did a really good job. And we met with him and we explained how we met, how long we'd been together, and basically a bunch of questions that he was going to work into parts of his talking during the ceremony. And he also gave us like a bunch of options for what we could say, or what he could say specifically at the ceremony. Because like, if you want one that's like more religiously influenced or not, he has different things that he can say at different times. He also offers the opportunity to do readings of excerpts from different works of literature. My wife picked something that was, it was technically a Bible passage, but it was something that was paraphrased when it was cited by, Isidore Strauss. And she was basically saying, where you go, I go. So she felt it was important to have that represented during the ceremony. And I picked something from, it's a work called Captain Corelli's Mandolin. And it's basically an excerpt about how anyone can, like, fall in love, but actually maintaining that love is significantly harder. That's the long and the short of it. We ultimately decided on those. We're starting to work out what the procession order is going to be, and having to clarify multiple times what the procession order is going to be. Because we wanted to make sure that I and the groomsmen came out in our little group, and then the bride and bridesmaids came out in their little group. And leading up to the ceremony, we're starting to fill in the blanks on songs. What we decided to do was, since we went with the Monster Hunter cake, we started incorporating that into the ceremony itself. Like, when the people who aren't us are coming down the aisle in the early parts of the ceremony, the private suite music from Monster Hunter World was playing. It was still wedding appropriate, but it was also music that, like, related to us in some way. And ultimately what we did was, for the songs that we came out to, we ultimately decided to, well, I had this idea in mind. I don't necessarily know if she was following it, but we wound up picking two songs that related to, one, how we met, and two, how we stayed together. And I'll get more into that when we get to the ceremony. So I have to pick who my groomsmen are. And I figure I want three different parts of my life represented. The family part, so I have an older brother. He was one of my groomsmen. And then I wanted two more groomsmen representing my friends. One of them, my group of online friends, which one role in the chat was one of my groomsmen. RCG represent. And then for the other groomsmen, I had this friend of mine who I had known since middle school, and who we still talk, we still meet up in person now and then, and he wound up being my best man. Now the thing is, you kind of have to coordinate what you're going to dress as for the groom and groomsmen. I already had this, like, navy blue suit that I'd worn for something previously. And rather than going out and getting a new one, we ultimately just decided, alright, I'm just gonna wear this one, and then we can get everyone else to match. Which, some people just bought a navy blue suit for that. At least one other person rented a suit, which ties into something else later, because I had one person who was like, okay, but what specific kind of blue? And I'm trying to, like, take photos of my suit to offer a reference, but every time I take a photo, it, like, washes out the color, and it doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like. Meanwhile, my wife is going off and doing, like, dress shopping, getting fitted for dresses. I was not a part of that. I don't even know what the hell I would do if I did go along, because we were following that superstition of you're not supposed to see what the dress looks like. And I didn't. Until the big reveal at the venue. So something else that we did is all of the groomsmen and myself were wearing a specific kind of tie. And it wasn't just like the material of the tie or the color of the tie. When I met with the officiant, we decided we were going to include a traditional recitation for a Scottish ceremony, because I'm a Scotsman, or at least descended from them. And we decided to take that one step further by getting ties that had a specific, it's called a tartan, but a specific pattern on them. It's the tartan for the Black Watch, which was a Scottish army regiment. Couldn't get ones for my family tartan because, I mean, that would just be a huge pain in the ass to try and work with on that short notice, but it still came out looking really good. So we're getting closer to the date. We're starting to figure out what we're doing music-wise for the ceremony and for the dancing. And then we realize there's like all sorts of other song cues we can have for the reception. Like there's the grand entrance where the groomsmen come out and then the bridesmaids come out, and then we have our grand entrance. And after we made some of the other song selections, we started thinking, well, we had this idea for this song for this part of the ceremony and didn't use it, so let's use it here. And that's how we started filling in a lot of the blanks. We also had to clarify some things with the DJ because he was working off of an older timeline, which had an older, like, order for people coming out for the ceremony. I was emailing him repeatedly in the days leading up to the event, like, no. This person's coming out under this music, and then we're coming out separately. In the moment, I'm just hoping, like, all of the sound cues are right for everything that's going to happen. Now, getting closer to when the event was going to happen, we did have a couple people who we were worried about, like, their ability to move around the venue. And they had this lift. There's the reception area and the dance floor, and then there's like some windows and doors that lead out to like an elevated deck type area. And from there you can go down some steps to get to where the wedding ceremony takes place, or you could take this lift/elevator thing. So we thought, oh, that'll be good for some of our like older invitees or people who just can't move too well. And then we get this like heads up that the elevator cannot be used for the ceremony because it got struck by lightning and it needs to be repaired. Excuse me. It's a few days out from the wedding. We're starting to have people come into town. Some of them are staying at hotels away from the event. Some of them are just like crashing with other people we know, or even crashing with us. Like, I know one of the people who was a bridesmaid for my wife was staying in our guest room, and at various points, some of our friends were crashing on the fold-out bed we have. One roll comes into town, I think it was on a Thursday. He was renting a suit. So, that means I have to take him to the place where he was getting his suit from, which was, I want to say like 20 minutes away from here. It wasn't particularly far, but we go there because he has confirmation that it's ready for pickup. We go there and it's not ready for pickup. So we think, well, shit. We might as well just do whatever else. And whatever else in this case was, I had to go to a photo thing at a Walmart to get some photos printed off for, like this one display thing we were doing with an engagement photo. I did that. We're starting to head back home. And then suddenly, one girl gets a text saying that his suit is ready. Which is great timing because, if they had waited like 1 minute more, I would have been on the highway heading home. But they did it just in the nick of time that I could make a turn down one street and then head back and get the suit. Speaking of photos, there was also something that we were doing at this wedding where there were like old photos of myself and my wife at various points in our lives and with various people, and like little humorous captions were written underneath each of them. Myself and her attempting to play musical instruments when we were really young, Halloween costumes, myself after playing football on like a really rainy, muddy field. And there were also a couple of photos of myself and the River City Gamers friends of mine. There was one group shot of us. Oh geez, the one I remember very vividly is the shot of myself and Blonde Guy Gamer enjoying a slice of pizza a little too much. But that's not the part that I remember the most. I remember that there was a Hunter cosplayer in the background who looks like he was going to jump one of us for the pizza. So we were getting all of those organized. And I realized as I was looking at some of the captions for these photos, some people's names are misspelled. Like, there's one person who has 2 G's in his name that there's only supposed to be one, maybe 2 times where my name was spelled wrong. One roll was in one of the photos, and whoever was doing the captions misheard that one roll. What we told them was it was a shot of myself and one roll in Canada, but the person doing the captions took that to mean one roll is Canadian. So the caption was about them, like, explaining the appeal of curling and bagged milk or something like that. And we had to go, he's not Canadian. Fortunately, the person who did these captions knew what font they used. So I went on my computer, just opened up Word, and made up some new captions for some of these. Fortunately, it was a simple enough operation because it was just like a strip of paper and some tape. So it was really easy to just like remove that, get a new one in place, and then no one would know the difference. As we were getting closer and closer to the wedding, there was more and more shit we had to do, more and more things to stress out about, and I know I was not getting that much sleep. Now, we had some hotels that a lot of our family were using, which were closer to the venue, but we also had a couple other hotels that some of our friends were using, which were different. There was one hotel that some of my wife's friends were in, particularly the matron of honor and her husband. And then there was another hotel where a bunch of the RCG guys came in. Rather than getting a bunch of separate rooms, they decided to get one big suite that a bunch of them could use. At this point, it is Thursday, and the wedding is on a Saturday. And due to weird scheduling conflicts with the venue, because of another event that they're putting on, we had to do the rehearsal dinner and rehearsal on different days. The rehearsal was on a Thursday. God, I am second guessing myself on all of this timeline now because so much of it was just a haze. But we have the rehearsal with whoever happens to be there at the time. And then we had to do the rehearsal dinner the following day. There weren't many there for the rehearsal that were like involved in the ceremony, but we did do the rehearsal dinner Friday, and a lot more people were in town for that. Thursday, we took over bins full of stuff for the venue. For like, there was a photo booth that we could bring props for. We brought some stuff for that. There were various like decorations and stuff, like the cake toppers that we had to drop off. Friday, we have more people in town, and we have to all go and get ready for the rehearsal dinner. You do kind of dress up for this, but like not as much as the wedding, obviously. And we end up going to this pretty nice Italian place. And while we're there, we just kind of like improvise where everybody's going to be seating, because they put us back in this party area that's separate from the main restaurant. They hand out menus for everybody for like this small selection of dishes that are available for the rehearsal dinner. On the back of the menu is a drink list, and it includes a bunch of different types of alcohol, which normally wouldn't matter to me because I don't drink. But then I look over the beer selection, and I notice something is a little off about it, because one of the selections is Bug Light. B-U-G. One roll happens to seize this and almost has a laughing fit. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the night. Because, like, the food was good. There was also too much of it. Like, I had to take half of it home with me to have as leftovers later, but it was good. But then they have desserts afterwards. And I think the options were cheesecake and tiramisu. Like, I've never had straight up cheesecake, just the thing that Cheesecake Factory offers that's like almost entirely chocolate. That's the closest thing I've gotten. So I have the cheesecake and it's okay. One roll has the cheesecake as well and asks for like the raspberry sauce that would go on top to be like on the side. They bring out his cheesecake and it's got this little like small container of raspberry sauce. It's like, I want to say 2-ish inches in diameter and like maybe an inch and a half high. He has like a little taste of it with like the end of one of his forks, one of the many forks that they gave us, and decides that it's not for him. And I'm in one of those moods. So I say, okay, I'll take that. He takes it and gives it to me. And I'm looking at this and thinking, I'm gonna chug this. Or like, shoot it. Or otherwise, just drink it. But I don't do it right away because one, I'm looking around to make sure my parents aren't watching what I'm doing. Because I know they're gonna say something if they see me, like, shooting back raspberry jam or sauce. And two, I'm swirling it a little just to get an idea of the consistency of it, and it is relatively thick. Like, if I just, like, try drinking it, it is not all going to come out fast enough to just, like, take a shot of it. Oh, and before this happened, they went around and collected the menus from everyone, but because I was so amused by Bug Light, I put mine under the table, folded it up, and slipped it in my pocket. So that's still around the home somewhere. I'm looking around thinking, is there going to be a good time to do this? And after a few minutes, I realize, no, there's really not a good time to do this. So eventually I just go, well, now or never. And I take the raspberry sauce thing, and I throw it back. And maybe half of it actually gets in my mouth. I have to hold this thing up for an absurd amount of time to make sure that the rest of it gets out. And as this is going on, some of my friends around me, I can't tell if they're saying chug or drink, but they're going like, drink, 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 drink. And eventually, some of his relatives and a couple of my family members hear someone going, drink, 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 and they just join in themselves. And I do eventually, like, get all of it out of the container into my mouth and swallow, and then just, like, toss the container back on the table. My parents didn't ask about what that was, which is good, because I wasn't going to explain it to them. Now, we all went home after the rehearsal dinner, and I actually did try to get to bed, like, at a decent hour. Okay, that's kind of a lie. Because we were coordinating, me and my RCG friends, for a movie night. And the movie night, we decided that the only time we were going to have for it, where, like, most of us were going to be there, was to do it after the rehearsal dinner. So, my Friday night was spent in the living room of my home with my RCG friends watching Tony Hawk in Boom Boom Sabotage.
Hey guys, I'm Tony.
Now the funny thing about this is that in my living room, on one wall there is a big poster of Tony Hawk. I refused to look at it for the entirety of the viewing because I was afraid that if I looked at it, Tony was going to be glaring down at all of us. about how we were definitely not raising the bar by doing this. There may or may not be a video on this at some point in the near or slightly distant future. Now, that wound up keeping us up until like past midnight, I believe. But once everybody got back to their hotels or wherever they were sleeping for the night, I turned in, had to wake up early the next day because there was another thing that we wanted to do like as a group, but the only time that we were going to have to do it would have been the day of the wedding before the ceremony. And and that was game chasing.
Which means we got a lot of games here, and it's our job to find them.
So what I did was I gave my RCG friends a list of like all the trade-in and retro video game stores that I could think of off the top of my head. And we decided which stores we were going to go to, like which ones to prioritize based on however long it took us to get through these, and like what route we were going to take to get to all of them. So we wound up meeting up a little before 11 a.m. because that's when like all of these stores opened on Saturday. Part of the planning for this was realizing that we're in Columbus. What is a significant portion of Columbus? Ohio State University. What does Ohio State University have? A really popular football team that plays on Saturdays. And they were having a home game during the time that we would be trying to game chase. So I said, let's do the one that's closest to campus first and then work our way away from that. So that's what we did. We went to the first one, and thankfully it was far enough away that like we didn't encounter heavy traffic. The only thing we saw was one of those street corner things that sells like their own prints of t-shirts that are Ohio State themed or football themed or whatever. So we get to the first place, which is this place called Play It, Trade It. Video games, movies, and music. Now, this place was the main location. There were 3 different Play It stores spread throughout the Columbus area, and this was like the hub, the main location. And it had just moved to a different building, which I had not seen yet. So I didn't really know what to expect as far as like organization, how much floor space they would have, because their old location was pretty cramped. They were having like things that would have to stack up to the ceiling in certain places, and like there was just not a whole lot of room for additional displays. So we get to this place, and I walk in, and it is a significant improvement over the previous place they had. They could actually display like most of their shit now. They had like proper organization for a bunch of their movies and music section, whereas before it was kind of a clusterfuck. They had display cases they could use like away from the register, which was something they couldn't effectively do in the old location. And we wound up spending a significant amount of time there. That's where the game chasing started for many people, but not for One Roll. Because while we were at the Walmart getting photos made, he decided to peruse their game section and wound up buying a couple of things there. So we pack up from there and we head to another place, which is on another side of town. It's called Warp Zone. This is a smaller store, but it does like have an okay selection of Japanese retro games in particular. They also have magazines there, and I was actually looking through the magazines, and I found this old issue of, I think it was Next Generation, but I saw the words 3DO as one of the article titles that was on the front cover of the magazine. I open up to the page number for it, and it's this article talking about how the 3DO is better in several ways than the PlayStation, and how it's setting a new bar for gaming achievement, and I thought, I gotta do something with this, and I bought it. Now, also while we were at Warp Zone, there was this like little plastic tub that was kind of on the floor off to the side of where the register is. And it has this note on it that just says free games. Now, it's not just games. There's other miscellaneous crap thrown in there. And our buddy Zero Master sees this and starts looking through it. And there's a Kinect in there. He holds it up, and he's like, "This is free?" And the guy's like, "Yes, take it." Not exactly a hot commodity, that Kinect. But then I start looking through it myself, and like, half jokingly, I'm picking up these old manuals for things like Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing, and I'm like, hell yeah, give me that. So I have a couple instruction manuals for shit like that. We had time to go to one more place. And there was this mall on the west side of Columbus called Tuttle Crossing. And in that mall, there is this place called Level 1 Games. It's another kind of small-ish store, but they have video games and they also have a display of some physical merch. Like, they have, like, properly made Pokemon badges for, like, all the different gyms. They have, like, printed Poké Dollars for all the... I realize I'm just saying Pokemon stuff over and over, but they also have, like, Kingdom Hearts stuff, Star Wars, Metal Gear, Castlevania, like various stuff or shit like that. Nothing is immediately sticking out to me, but I'm noticing that they do have some games that are $5 or less, so I'm remembering that for later. Do they still have the AT-AT GameCube? Yes, they do. Oh yeah, while we were at Level 1, thank you for reminding me, Blondie, they had a copy of Maximum Chase, and One Roll and I immediately suggested that he should get it. So he did. Now, while we're there, Zero is kind of looking through the shelves that are behind the display cases and the register. Zero notices this one thing in particular that's 3DO related. It's like a metallic 3DO controller.
Your gods will not save you.
Neither of us have seen this before, and it's sealed. Zero spends the next several minutes debating, do I get this controller? It's a lot to pay for a controller. Also, it's sealed. Do I really want to do that? But eventually, the guy running the store cuts a deal with him, like giving him a slight discount because he was already buying something else from that store as well. And he says, fuck it, I'm going for it. And he gets it. So, like, the people who were just guests for the wedding, they didn't have to be there for a bit yet. But myself and One Roll, people who were in the wedding ceremony, we had to be there like an hour and a half before everybody else. So we needed to go. So myself and One Roll split off from the group. He gets his suit rental and gets ready for that. I go back home and get my stuff on. And actually, as I'm coming home, my wife is getting ready to leave herself because she's going to get dressed and get makeup on at the venue in the bridal suite. So I go home, I shower, I shave, do my hair in the way that I do my hair, which is just dunk it in hairspray and then headbang for 60 seconds. Don't know if I ever mentioned that, but that's how I do it. And then, like, I'm throwing on my suit because I'm kind of running behind on time because I need to get mostly dressed. I didn't really put on the suit jacket until later. Get in my car, drive to the hotel, pick up One Roll when he's ready, and then drive to the venue. Like, even with everything being relatively close together, no one was more than a 10-minute drive away. It was still a bit of a time crunch. But we eventually get to the venue, and there's this, like, loft area where the groom and groomsmen can hang out. And as soon as I get in, and that's when I saw the Monster Hunter cake for the first time, so I snapped some pictures of that. I go up to the area where the groomsmen hang out. And just chilling on a couch up there is the husband of the matron of honor, who I'd met before when I was... Well, one time when he was here visiting in Ohio, and then another time when I was out in California where he and the matron of honor live. But he was not the first person I was expecting to see when I got up there. Like, I also saw my brother, my friend who is the best man, and everyone's asking me, are you excited? Are you ready for it? And my answer's always, yeah and no. So whatever's going on in the, like, bridal party dressing room, I don't know. And they have a fridge up there, they have water, there's some soda, there's some, like, charcuterie up there as well. Oh, we have inside info from the matron of honor saying that there was a lot of my wife looking at herself in the mirror and saying, I look so pretty. Well, she was. I have some things that I wanted the groomsmen to do for the ceremony. And one of them was, I wanted to do, like, a certain little, like, handshake every time, like, a groomsman walked past me to set up for the ceremony. My brother and I have one that we kind of already did, so there was no mystery as to what we were going to do for that. For myself and the best man, there was a bit of question, but I came up with something for that, which was, when we hung out when we were younger, we would often, like, go see movies at this place called Valley View. And, this theater had an arcade beside it. And in that arcade, we would usually play 2 games in particular. One was called Mocap Boxing. It's a boxing game where you stand under this motion sensor with these 2 weighted gloves and, like, dodge punches and then throw punches to hit whoever you're attacking. I wanted to reference that, and there was another game we played called Carnival. I've mentioned it a few times on this channel, but it's like a horror-themed, going through a cursed/haunted carnival thing that's a rail shooter and gets pretty gory at points. So we come up with a handshake where we do like 2 punches to simulate the mocap boxing motions, and then we do this thing where we like clank our fists together, because every time we finished a level in Carnival, we would hold up the guns and clank them. So that's what we decided to do for him. And then that brought me to one rule. And this is going to be really hard to explain. But one of the things we joked about for a while was the music video for Blue by Eiffel 65, which has some pretty hilarious effects in it, particularly when the band members start to fight the aliens. Because there's this one thing this guy does where, like, he's awkwardly throwing his fists to the side like he's dance fighting, and then aliens just go flying in different directions. So we decided to mimic that motion as, like, our handshake. But I wasn't done with that. I also got these special tie clips that I wanted each of the groomsmen to wear. And each of them had a little design on it that related to something about them or about our friendship. So the one from my brother had a speedometer on it, because he's the one between us who's, like, really into cars. The one for my best man had a D20 on it, because we've done some tabletop stuff together and he's really into that. And then there was the one for One Roll. And I'm glad he's not in the chat for this right now. So One Roll used to have the username WellUnreal007. He's played several Bond games. So I decide I am going to get him a tie clip which has the 007 logo on it. And I'm handing these out. My brother says thank you, my friend says thank you. I give this one to One Roll. He doesn't say anything. He just leans over, grabs his head for a moment, turns away. It's like I reminded him of something really embarrassing. Which was not the aim. But he did say thank you, he did like it, and he did wear it for the ceremony. And truth be told, my father also really likes James Bond. So he may have been slightly jealous of me getting that for one of my friends. More time goes by. I've got the full suit on. I'm ready to go for the ceremony, except I'm not, kind of in the middle of this, I realize I'm still wearing my engagement ring. So I go, oh shit, and I take it off and I threw it in a pocket on my suit. I don't remember which pocket I put it in. So before I get that suit back to the dry cleaners or wherever, I need to do a thorough search on it just to make sure that that ring isn't still in one of those pockets. But the time comes where we have to start lining up for the ceremony. It takes place outside, underneath these like triangular wooden arches, and then there's like a stone path leading up, and then there's benches people can sit on. Everybody comes in through these doors where you go out these doors, you go up a couple steps, walk down this concrete path, make a left turn, and then go down the aisle. And I'm just hoping at this point that the sound guy is going to get all the sound cues right. I start listening as the officiant is going, "Are you ready for this?" And I'm saying, "No." First few people go out, the officiant goes out, and he gives a spiel about no photography because, oh, I actually need to rewind time a bit. Before the ceremony actually starts, they do this thing called the first look, which is where the groom and the bride see each other for the first time before the ceremony, like when everybody's all dressed up. We did a bunch of photos for that, where we went out on this path that's like out by this lake, and the sun streaming in through the trees, and it was just a great setting for that. But getting back to the ceremony, the officiant says, like, no photography, because we already had, like, a team of photographers there, and no video. Except, there was some video. And that video was, one, some of our RCG buddies decided that one person was going to be on their phone streaming the ceremony over Discord to some other people in our friend group who couldn't attend, either because they couldn't make the trip or because they were way too far away to be able to make the trip, like in Europe. So we had that going on. And then I also gave the RCG guys my camera that I use for making my videos. And I asked them to get video of the ceremony. I think it was Blondie who was running the camera and then Shadow who was streaming. But they wound up getting the whole thing. Thankfully. Really appreciate them doing that. But that brings me to my worries about sound cues. I said before that we kind of chose songs that related to the games that brought us together. Which brings me to my song, because the game that brought us together was Bloody Roar. So my walkout music for myself and the groomsmen was the credits theme for Bloody Roar 3. No regrets. Jeremiah, aka Jerry the OG, the guy who plays Bloody Roar all the time and competed in Combo Breaker tournaments for it, he was in the crowd, and apparently he had like one of those, "Are you for real, bro?" kind of moments as the music was playing. I wish I could have seen the look on his face. And as I'm walking down the aisle and this music is playing, I'm thinking, what is my dad gonna think of this? Because my dad is a very, like, traditional, by-the-book kind of person. Like, this is the kind of thing that would not fly for him. So I'm wondering, when I get to the end and turn around, is my dad going to be glaring at me? And thankfully he wasn't. I think he was just too surprised by what in the hell was playing to be angry. You're probably the only person outside of South America to get married to Bloody Roar music. Hey, until Jerry gets married, I get to the end, all my groomsmen come out, and we all do our little handshake as we pass each other. And then it's time for the bridesmaids and the bride to come out. And for this, we decided, well, she decided that she wanted to come out to, I think the song is called To Those Alive. It's from Monster Hunter Tri. It's the music that plays when you start up the game and it's going through that opening cinematic with that really sweeping orchestral score. And not only that, but we specifically requested to the DJ that he play like a shortened version of it. It was one that I cut together and then emailed to him a few days before the ceremony. So the DJ says, yeah, we can play this. And then I remember leading up to the ceremony, my wife was really concerned about the timing of the music. Like, she wanted the bridesmaids to come out and then for herself to come out at a very specific point in the song, like when the music really picks up. So the music is playing, the bridesmaids are coming out one by one, and then Matron of Honor also comes out.
Will you all please rise?
And they're walking down the aisle, and I know that the song is wrapping up. And then, as the final note of the song hits, they get to their spot and stop.
You may be seated.
It couldn't possibly have been timed any better. Because the music just stops, and the officiant goes right into the rest of the ceremony. So the ceremony's going on, and there's a part where I'm supposed to step forward and shake her dad's hand. She steps forward, we turn, we hold each other's hands, and the ceremony goes on. I know when I'm supposed to do this, but I think the officiant was worried that I may have forgotten, because I can feel his hand in my back pushing me forward to shake her dad's hand. But ceremony goes on. He's reading through all the things that we agreed on before. We're holding our hands, we're looking at each other, because he specifically said, don't look back at me while I'm talking. Like, I'm trying not to stand with, like, my legs locked, because I remembered this time when I was in marching band, where we were just practicing standing at attention. Someone locked their legs when they did that. It disrupted their blood flow, and they passed out. So my nightmare scenario was that happening in the middle of the ceremony, which it didn't, thankfully. We recite the vows that we were doing. We get to the point where we do the exchange of rings. We took tips from each other on what kind of ring we would like, and even like listed specific examples. But I couldn't remember what I told her I was looking for in a ring. And I don't know if she remembered either, but I got her this opal ring. Like the kind of opal that, like, the lighting changes and the colors of the stone change a bit. That's the one I got her, and she loved it. And then she puts the ring on my finger. And I'm going, wait a minute. Because I couldn't remember what I told her to get. And it's this silver ring where in the middle of it, there is a pattern of like some small green emeralds, a Celtic rune, and thistles, which thistles are like a prominent Scottish symbol. Another thing I was worried about was making sure that I got the ring size right. So as I'm putting the ring on her finger, I'm going, oh God, please just go all the way on the finger. Please don't get stuck. And that didn't happen either. So none of my worst case scenarios had panned out yet. The ceremony continues going on. We get to the part where we're declared husband and wife, and we turn back, and it's time for us to proceed up the aisle and back the way we came. And this is when the next song kicks in, and in this case, our walking back down the aisle music was the Quest Complete music to Monster Hunter 4. Because we had to keep the theme going. We go back up the aisle, down the stairs and through the doors. The way that people are supposed to follow us are a groomsman walks down the aisle with one of the bridesmaids. Thing is, there were 3 groomsmen and 4 bridesmaids. One roll ends up walking down the aisle with a bridesmaid on either arm. Oh, that's something else I should mention. We had some music playing, like, leading up to the ceremony. And that consisted primarily of tracks from Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion and the game I'm playing right now. I had Bard's Tale 4 music playing for part of the ceremony. One of the bridesmaids is a huge The Elder Scrolls fan, so they flipped when they heard the music. Good! We all, like all of us, the groomsmen, the bridesmaids, the officiant, myself, my wife, we're all, like, back in that this little hallway area underneath where the reception is happening. And that's the first time that we really, like, take a look at our rings and reflect on what just happened and, like, how well everything went throughout that. The officiant has to leave, so he leaves then. In the reception area, I believe that they were playing another selection of songs, which I didn't specify. Well, I did specify some specific songs, but I didn't, like, specify everything that the DJ should play. I gave him, like, 5 or 6 tracks from a game called The Last Story, and then said, use these as a guide. And then, I think it was One Roll who pointed out to me later that one of the songs they were playing, because I couldn't really hear it from where I was, they started playing tracks from Saga Frontier, which kind of caught me off guard, because I'm like, this guy knows Saga Frontier? Blondie also recognized another song he played, which was from Silent Hill 4, which really caught me off guard, because that's not exactly, like, within the wheelhouse of what I asked him to play, but, I mean, I was still okay with it. So the time comes when we need to make our grand entrance, which involves us, like, going up this staircase and then going through this one area they have set up and into the dining area. The music we chose for this, for the groomsmen and the bridesmaid to come out, was Sweet Soul Brother from Jet Set Radio.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, first and family, let's welcome the groomsmen.
Which is foreshadowing, in a way, for what happens next. I should clarify one thing first. The venue told us that because we still paid, like, X amount for the venue, we'd already, like, basically overpaid for the amount of guests that we had, so we could add extra things that we were previously not going to have. So that's when we decided to really, like, go extra with everything. We got a liquor bar, we got a cigar bar, we got a pretzel station, we got, like, extra lighting for the dance floor. We got this thing called Dancing on the Clouds, which is where, like, they shoot fog onto the floor of where you're dancing, and then you, like, dance through that. And one of the extra things we got was lights and, like, smoke launchers for the grand entrance of the bride and groom. This is all happening, and the DJ is, like, giving this grand entrance for us, and in the background, The Concept of Love from Jet Set Radio Future is playing. And then the adrenaline kicks in, and I just start, like, running around high-fiving people at all the dining tables. We had dining tables set up where, like, there were a maximum of 10 people who were family or friends that were all sitting at these different tables. RCG basically had its own table. So, like, Blondie, Zero, One Roll, Shadow, Angel, his wife, Fighterworks Factory, aka Black Xeon, was there, and so was Jerry. And then, like, I had some of my bandmates at another table, Amanda, who I know through conventions, my best man, some of his friends. I mean, we didn't get, like, the 90 or something that we invited, but it still felt like we were approaching that, even though, like, we came up short. We go to sit at the bride and groom's table, which is in the back corner, and then all the dining tables kind of splay out from there. Now, before the, like, the dinner happens and everything connected to that, there's a welcome speech that happens, among many other speeches. And the welcome speech is given by my wife's father. He's trying to give his speech. And it doesn't take long before he has to stop because he's really getting choked up. Both my wife and I get up at least once to just try and comfort him and encourage him through it. He still gets choked up a couple of times, but he does manage to get through it. It's a really heartfelt speech. Okay, my wife adding she cried like a little bitch, but we get through it. And then there are some other speeches that happen. The matron of honor gives her speech, which is really nice. My best man gives a speech. What he said kind of made me reflect back on some of the things he was saying, and yeah, it was also a really good speech. And then for some reason, I said I wanted to say something. I did kind of choke up at one point because there's a part where I'm recalling when I was going through my extended hospital stay. And during that time, my wife was still working 9-10 hour days. And no matter how bad a day at work she had, no matter how exhausted she was, every day she would still come by and visit me. Not just stay to the end of visiting hours, stay well past the end of visiting hours, go home, lose sleep for work the next day, and then repeat the cycle all over again. And there was one amusing part where, some of the previous speeches said that my wife moved closer to me, for me. And then her mom stands up in between these speeches and says, "I thought you were moving out there for automotive school." I mean, she was. That wasn't the only incentive to do that. We get into dinner. This comes to another thing that we told the DJ to do, which is my wife is a big fan of a genre of music called city pop. And he was playing city pop through all of the dinner hour. Take that, Mom. City pop does work. But then it comes time to cut the cake. And because of how the cake was layered, even though they explained to us how to cut it, we were still having a little trouble with doing it. But we do eventually get that down. They did say, at several other points during the night, the venue staff, "By the way, we have a slice of cake for each of you at your table." But we were so busy doing other shit that we really didn't have time to go back to our table and, just have our cake. They did save that for us, though, so we could have it later. And the cake was really good. Because right after the cake cutting, we did the shoe game. Basically, the humor of that derives from, when the couples disagree on an answer to a question.
Who is most likely to forget an anniversary or a special date? They're both confessing their sins right together. Who is better with a car? Who's the better driver? Oh, baby, we disagree on this one. Oh, she was about to kick you with her hand. So then, let me ask this question then. Who has the better driving record? All right. Scott is the better driver. We've settled that debate. Who is the morning person? They both declined to answer this, pleading the fifth on that question. It's fair. That's fair. You're allowed to do that. Who's more likely to get lost? And she still claims to be the better driver.
Immediately after the shoe game is the first dance of the bride and groom. We were tossing around ideas for what to do for this. What we ultimately decided to do was, we did Jet Set Radio for the entrance. We figured, why don't we do another Jet Set song for the first dance? So, we settled upon Aisle 10 by Scapegoat Wax. And what we decided to do was, we did some basic choreography because my wife is still in a dress, so she can't do anything too crazy like maneuverability wise. So we kind of coordinated around that with me doing some of the more complex stuff. We also incorporated like a couple movements and Gum's idle animation from Jet Set Radio Future as part of the dance. And there's one part where, like, if you pick Beat in Jet Set Radio, he does this little animation which includes, like, kind of a cartwheel move. I go to do that. But remember, fog has been spewing out on the floor of the dance area. And that fog has little particles of liquid in it. So I go to do this cartwheel and I feel my hands slide. I don't know what it ultimately looked like, but somehow I avoided eating shit in the middle of the first dance. Otherwise, the first dance goes off without a hitch. And then that brings us to the first dance between mother and groom. So my mother and I do that. And there was another point where I had a little too much momentum and I could feel my feet slip a little bit with the fog that was going across the dance floor. Now that leads to the dance between the father of the bride and the bride. And what they ultimately decided to do was the curly shuffle. Whereas, like, the first dance and the mother-groom dance were like a minute-ish long, and then we just faded the music. They did pretty much the entire song. And there were a couple of points, I remember, like, in the days leading up to this, where her dad was in town, and they specifically set aside time to practice this, but I definitely wasn't expecting them to go, like, for as much as the song as they did. That happened because when your mom married him, that was the first dance with you when you were like 7. Oh, damn, so that's a throwback. But once those dances wrap up, like, they start doing dancing for everybody. And the first song they do right out the gate is, if I remember correctly, Let's Dance by David Bowie. So the dancing's like in full swing now, and then the sound cuts out. I don't know if someone stepped on a cable or what, but the sound cut out, and then like after a little bit they got it working again, picked up right where they left off with Let's Dance. And then if I remember correctly, and this kind of threw me off at first, they weren't just like playing a song, song ends, next song begins. The DJ was like mixing the songs and then crossfading them into each other. So it was just non-stop music. So Let's Dance fades, and then Next to Me starts playing, which is a song from Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. And I go, well, that's my cue, because part of the agreement between my parents was I had to dance, like, a decent amount throughout the, like, hours that happens. Now, I don't think I'm a really good dancer. I'm just a person who has a little bit of rhythm, okay footwork / coordination, mostly because I played a lot of soccer / football. So this song happens, I'm mostly just vibing. And then I say, fuck it, and I start breaking out, like, some top rock steps. I'm doing like the 1-2s, I'm doing like the Indian step patterns. And I remember at one point, Jeremiah, when I'd stepped aside for a moment, saying like, I didn't know you could move like that. And well, I usually don't have a reason to. I still don't think I'm that good, but I'm better than terrible. I do have to like be careful not to overdo it because like if I'm out there too long, I really need water. And they were struggling to keep up with the water station because it was empty at several points. At some point during like either dinner or dancing or something, I hear that one of his relatives is outside on the deck area or near the pond area fishing. which was the last thing I expected to hear, is apparently this guy brought like a collapsible fishing rod with him and just started fishing in the nearby pond. Even more surprising, he caught something. If I remember correctly, it was some kind of a bass, but I didn't even know that there were fish in that lake or pond or whatever it was. So anyway, the dancing continues, and then they start playing some of the slow songs, and one of them is Love Thing by Joe Satriani. And I played that for 3 reasons. Number 1, it's actually kind of a throwback to a video that I did. Back when I did the Bloody Roar retrospective, the first time I show Sheena in Bloody Roar 2, that's the song that plays in the background. Number 2, there was a friend of mine I invited who I was in a band with and am still friends with and still try to collaborate on music with. He is the one that got my brother into Satriani, who then got me into Satriani. So I knew that he would appreciate that if that got played. And he even told me afterward, your brother says that Always With Me, Always With You is the better song, and I kind of agree, but you can't beat Love Thing for like a slow dance like this. The third reason is Love Thing was one of the candidates I threw out for the first dance before we decided to go with Aisle 10 by Scapegoat Wax. So I figured, well, if it was in the running for that, I might as well put it on the must playlist. Time continues passing. Things really become a haze for me at this point. Talking to random people, occasionally getting on the dance floor. Like, I remember another song we had on the must playlist was the original Carmel Dancin'. My wife and all of her bridesmaids and the matron of honor were on the dance floor doing this dance. I kind of like walk on and give them the stink eye before ultimately joining in myself. And I remember my mother is off to the side, watching this and going, is the dance just you do the thing with your hands? So ultimately, we do get her on the dance floor doing the dance as well. And then there was another song we had on the general playlist that I didn't know if they were going to play, which was Maria by Scooter. I was pleasantly surprised that he decided to mix that in. So there was the song for my parents that played and the song for my wife's parents that played. I will note, I did not get what little dance skills I have from my father, who I was trying to notice like how long he spent on the dance floor. I'm pretty sure the only time I saw him on the dance floor was for him and my mom's song. And he was out there for maybe 90 seconds for the entire night. Yeah, that's right. We did manage to get one Eurobeat song into the dance portion. You know, one of those, you can't dance to this kind of songs. And yes, people did. People did in fact dance to it. Parents just don't understand. Now at this point, one of my friends, who was also a former bandmate of mine, comes up to me and says, this was a great time, but I gotta go. And then as he's leaving, the DJ says, this next song is dedicated to the River City Gamers, friends of the bride and groom, and then Friends by Dragon Sound starts playing. Everyone in RCG gets on the floor. I bring Dean from Fighterworks Factory onto the floor too. And the friend of mine who was going to leave says, nah, fuck that. Comes back to the dance floor and starts dancing. And we just, like, rock out to the entire song. So I'm getting more and more exhausted as the night goes on. They start playing the Casper Slide. So the Casper Slide starts playing and I go, I need to take a breather. So I step outside, go to find some water, and then I come back in later, and apparently that was like one of the only times that Jerry was on the floor dancing. And he was like, "You missed it." For context, I'm willing to bet that Jeremiah was the best dancer there. And I just happened to walk out for the few minutes that he decided to unleash his powers.
Marge, that little guy hasn't done anything yet. Look at him. He's gonna do something, and you know it's gonna be good.
Right foot, 2 stumps. Left foot, 2 stumps. Hands on your knees, hands on your knees.
In the middle of the dancing, there was a brief break so that my wife could do the bouquet toss. And we tossed around a few different ideas for what this could be. I suggested at one point the theme to Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. But the song that we ultimately went through, and my wife cleared this with her mother, was, she decided to make the bouquet toss music Move Bitch by Ludacris.
All right, so ladies, here's the rules. There are no rules. It is a battle royal, a fight to the finish.
Off to the side, I'm standing with some of my RCG friends and going, okay, how much do you bet that she hits the lights with it? Like, what are the odds that it gets stuck in one of the wooden support beams? But she does wind up and do the bouquet toss. It goes over one of the wooden supports, does not get stuck, and gets caught by one of her friends or relatives.
2, 3. It's high as heavens. Oh, there it is. She screamed aloud and she earned it.
We continue dancing into the night. As this is going on, my wife and I are trying to make time to do other things and not really finding it. Stuff like the cigar bar, the pretzel station. Like, I just managed to sneak in like a few bites of a pretzel. Because they had like the pretzel and then they had these like different dips that you could get for it. It's okay because I made up for it the day after. Yeah, we keep going into the night and then the finale happens. Which I need to like future-proof this by noting my wedding occurred on the 21st of September. You can probably guess what the final song of the night was. It didn't feel right to have it be anything else. That final song happens for the night. As they're like clearing everyone out for the final send-off, they start playing Boom 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 by I think it was Vengaboys. It was Boom Boom Boom, I Want You in My Room. That one. Which was on the general playlist, but they played it after the dancing had stopped and we had to leave the venue. They do the send-off for us, which is all of the guests get outside, like at the front of the venue, leading out to the parking lot, and they all have sparklers. This is at 11:30 at night, mind you. And the two of us go through the middle of them as they're all cheering and holding these sparklers up. We like get to the bottom and we go, well, let's do it again. So we go back through this like group of people holding these sparklers, and then we get to the top and we go, all right, let's do it again, and then we go back through it. Thankfully, the sparklers lasted long enough to be able to do that multiple times. But at the end of all this, we have to go home. And we have a special ride to do it in. My wife owns a 1991 Mazda Miata. The kind that has like the pop-up headlights. And one thing that she had done for the wedding was gussy it up as a just married vehicle. She gets a just married sign tied into like a roll bar on the back of the Miata. She gets all of these flowers and like lines the top of the windshield with them going down parts of the door. And this is our wedding vehicle. We both get in once we work out all the travel arrangements for everybody. And then we start driving home, and she is blasting Rage Your Dreams, which is a song that plays in Initial D. If I remember correctly, I think it's the credit music for one of the seasons. But we're going home with that, and we decided to take the longer way home just to let the moment simmer a little longer. We get home, we get out of our wedding clothes, and we need to get to sleep because the festivities are not over. This is carrying over into the next day, when we have to get up early and get ready to go to, as part of the celebration, the Ohio Renaissance Fair. I was kind of on the fence about doing it because I thought I was going to be just too exhausted from the previous day to do much of anything. But she got dressed up for it, and I went into full Scotsman mode. At one point for my birthday, my wife's parents got me a gift, which was a kilt. I'd been slowly collecting parts of Scottish attire over time, and I feel kind of weird about going to a Ren fair and having a kilt, but still wearing normal ass shoes and a t-shirt and a baseball cap. But this time I could go in pretty much the full outfit. So I had the kilt, I had kilt hose, I had ghillie brogues, I had the hat, I had a proper shirt for it, which was a forest green color. So I got in that full attire. I also had the sporen, which is the bag with the designs on it that hangs in front of the kilt, because kilts don't have pockets and you need to have something to keep your shit in. We all piled into 3 different cars, I believe, and drove out to the Renaissance Festival, which was an hour away. Also, while we were there, we got the chance to take in, it's become, my wife and I's, one of our favorite acts when we go there. It's this group called Pirates Creed. It's one guy on a drum and another guy on an acoustic guitar, and they just, do these songs about pirating. And every once in a while, they break out into a Weird Al parody. We actually saw them at a bar in Columbus about a month before the Ren Fair started. And I remember at that particular show, they started playing The Way by Fastball. And the moment I heard the first couple bars of that song, all of the lyrics to the song just came back to me and I started singing along. Also, while we were there, my RCG friends are wandering around and taking part in a bunch of different events there. Some of them bought CDs from Pirates Creed. There were game stations set up there for things a lot of archery and throwing. So there's an archery range, and then there's stations for throwing ninja stars. Very medieval, I know. Throwing knives, throwing axes, and throwing gladiuses. I will say that among all of those, I think that the hardest ones to actually get them to stick into the wall that you're throwing them into is probably either axes or gladiuses. Just because the blade portion that will actually stick into the wall is so small compared to the total surface area of the object you're throwing. Unless you're doing those little hand axes or axes that are specifically designed for throwing, which will have a higher blade to surface area ratio, it can be really tough to get one to stick. Unlike the ninja stars, which there's pointed ends on every angle that you go to for that. Also, while we were there, we did some window shopping for weapons, which obviously the Canadian people were not going to buy a sword and try taking it across the country border. But or like people who flew in weren't going to try and take a sword back on the plane. But there was one particularly large sword. It was a two-hander, a Zweihander, if you will, which Wonrul asked to like see and get a photo with. The sword was taller than him. Also, while we were there, we took in the Theater in the Ground, which is a play on words for theater in the round. It's basically this comedy act that's loaded with puns. And they're performing on this stage, which has a huge mud pit in front of it. And throughout the show, they find ways to take like comic pratfalls into the mud pit. Also, there is some seating for the show that is incredibly close to the mud pit. And if you get mud splashed on you during the show, you get a $1 discount from their merch booth.
Wait! These not runes! These ordinary everyday rocks! You're supposed to have runes!
Runes, rocks, what Korg know? Korg Catholic!
Runes say Catholic, then bagpipe!
They do? What? No, not again.
So we eventually all meet up again, and we go through this display called the Dungeon of Doom, which is basically like a way of showing off like medieval torture devices and what they would do to prisoners. We were on a bit of a time limit when it came to the Renaissance Festival, because the same day that we were doing this, there were some people in our group that needed to catch a flight back home. We wound up taking different groups on the way back. I initially went down with my wife, a couple of her friends, her dad, and another one of her relatives. And then I wound up going back with basically some of the RCG guys. There's another reason we're ducking out early, and that is because the suit that Wonrul rented for the wedding was due back at the chain of stores that we got it from before they closed on that Sunday. And because it's Sunday, they were closing at 6 p.m. So we had to make sure we left in plenty of time, and we did in fact bring his suit with us to the Renaissance Festival. We all piled into Zero's car, drove home, and managed to get to the place to return the suit with like a little under a half hour to spare. And then from there it was just a matter of making sure that the people who had to catch a flight that evening could get to the airport in time, which we got them to the airport in time. And there was something unfortunate that happened while we were having people staying over at our home. Because at one point, my wife was using the bathroom sink, and I hear her go, "There's something up with the sink." Because she was using it, and she started hearing like this splashing noise coming from underneath it. She opens up the cabinet, and there is standing water at the bottom of it, and water splashed all over the back of it. One of the pipes for the sink was leaking. So, we couldn't use the bathroom sink. Anyone who had to wash their hands had to walk to the kitchen to do it. Like, I remember getting back, taking all my Scottish stuff off, changing into regular clothes. At some point later in the day, all the RCG guys went back to their hotel. They still had the room until the following day. what we ended up doing was we decided we were going to do like a Red Letter Media best of the worst, like offshoot, knockoff, bootleg, whatever you want to call it kind of thing. We did the quote-unquote top of the bottom Anime North edition at one point. This was going to be like a spotlight version of that, where we just talked about Tony Hawk in Boom Boom Sabotage. So what we decided to do was we had to figure out what we were going to do camera-wise. Because I had my camera, and Zero had a camera of his own with a tripod that he could use for his angle for like two people who were talking. And then what we did was we wound up using my cell phone, which isn't the best option for video, but is serviceable enough. We set that back on like a kitchen counter style area on top of a cooler, which we braced with a couple of slightly heavier objects so that it was just at such an angle that it would capture the other two people sitting at the table. And we wound up using that to film our discussion of the movie. So look forward to that, I guess. I mean, before that there were other things that happened, like they had dinner at Steak and Shake. That is when my wife Tiger had a dessert that she shared with everybody. It's like a European chocolate truffle pie. That wound up taking up most of the rest of the day. And then that led into Monday. Actually, I'm starting at like 4:30 in the morning on Monday because Shadow Snake, another one of our friends, his flight was at like 6 in the morning. So I had to wake up extra early to get him to the airport because I wasn't going to make him like go to the airport and wait 5 hours for a plane just because it's more convenient for me. I did that, went home, slept a bit more, and then woke up, and everyone else who was left from the RCG group, which at this point was basically One Rule, Blondie, and Zero Master, they checked out of that hotel and were just hanging out at my place until they were going to leave. But one of the things we did do was we got lunch at this place nearby called Hiro Ramen. If you just look at the outside of it, it very clearly used to be a fast food place. But I couldn't confirm like which fast food place it used to be. I was thinking Burger King or maybe Wendy's. It was eventually confirmed when my wife went to the restroom and saw the mirror that they had there, because on the mirror was a picture of the King from Burger King and a notice about employees washing hands. So, mystery solved on that front. But we all like pile into cars and drive over to Hiro Ramen, and there's like, let's see, myself, wife, there's like 8 of us all going to this place, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to sit so that we can all be together. One of the employees of the space comes up to our group and says, you can use the party area if you want. They have this party area that's like enclosed by doors where there's like 2 long tables that you can sit like 8 to 10 people at. It's usually reserved for events, but nobody was using it at the time, so they just let us use it. And it was remarkably convenient. So as you might be able to guess by the name, it's a ramen place. However, there's something unique about the way that they handle it. For one thing, you do not order at the counter, and you do not have a waiter come to you and take your order. They have QR codes on the tables, which you scan, and then go to a menu and place your order there. And if that doesn't work for you, there's like a kiosk in one part of the store where you could potentially order something from. So we all use the QR codes and make our orders. And here is what actually gets a surprising amount of people to go here. You place your order, and then eventually this little robot will wheel out to your table and then deliver your order to you. When I say robot, imagine like a much flatter version of Astro's head from Astrobot at the top of it. And then the rest of the body is just like a bookshelf with wheels. So the food gets placed on all these shelves inside of it with the receipts, and then it wheels out from behind the counter to whatever table it's supposed to go to, and then drops it off. And it will, like in a sort of digitized voice, say like, here's your order, tap me on the head when you're ready for me to go. And if you do tap it on the head in a certain way, almost like you're petting a dog or something, like when you send it away, instead of it just turning around and going back, the eyes will like have a heart emote that goes across its little digital screen, and then it'll turn around and go back to where it came from. So we ate there. I was not as hungry as I thought I would be. I only got like halfway through my bowl of ramen. So the rest of it just wound up being dinner for another time. And then the rest of that is really a blur to me. There was a lot of hanging out at my place. Oh, that's right, we did do a bit more game shopping because I can't remember if it was Blondie or somebody else, but I think somebody saw something at the first location that we went to, the Play It. Someone was like, oh, maybe I should have gotten that, and then we ended up going back for it. The husband of the Matron of Honor was with us, and I think he wound up getting like Brave Fencer Musashi and some other game, I can't remember what. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that store made like a few $100s off of us just in those 2 days. But we got a multi-tap hooked up to the PS2, and we played like Sega Superstars Tennis. We broke out Vampire Knight for some reason. I can't remember why. Oh yeah, and there was the saga of the Ohio State hat. Zero's dad collects hats, and he was apparently looking for one that's Ohio State themed. Now, in and around Columbus, there are these stores called the Buckeye Room and Buckeye Corner, which are basically stores that just sell nothing but Ohio State merch. Before they went back to Canada, I rushed Zero out to one of these stores and managed to grab him one of those hats real quick. He kind of like took a moment to marvel at the amount of Ohio State merch that was in one of these stores. And I had to tell him, like, this isn't even half of it. You would not believe how much shit they just slap an Ohio State logo on and sell it. He was like, Ohio State golf balls? I'm like, that's not even close to the weirdest thing. But the last person who was staying with us was One Roll, who wound up flying out on Tuesday. Shit was relatively uneventful with him. We did end up having Culver's as one last send-off meal, which is like a Midwest staple. But aside from that, I think I'm finally out of shit to talk about for the wedding.